Good morning, everyone. This is Monday, June the 3rd of 2024, here in London at the Royal College of Physicians. I'm Fabiola Martin. I'm the elected president of the International Retrovirology Association. Thank you so much for joining us. It is, for many of us, an emotional moment after not having physically seen each other since 2019 in Lima, when we held our last physical conference, but we had our online conference in 2022. It's wonderful to be here. It's wonderful to be in this building, of which many of us English-trained physicians have been through. The last time I was here, I received my fellowship to the college. And when you walk about, you will see the paintings and the portraits of all the presidents, and you will notice that there are only few women amongst those. But I was one of the lucky 30 out of the 93 people who got the fellowship that day that I received mine from Jane Dacre, the second woman who became president. It's wonderful to be here because we all fight for the elimination of a virus that we find hard to find niche for, money for, funding for. So I want to specifically thank Graham and his team for accepting my, I don't know, was it begging or forceful when I asked you? Directive, thank you. So I'm doing what you're telling me to do, namely make sure we have a conference. So I asked Graham to please take on the next conference when I called him in 2022, because we didn't have any takers. We were in the midst of the pandemic and inflation and recession rising all over the world. It was very hard to find conference organizers. So I'm really grateful, Graham, and you have raised huge amount of funds. With this, I want to thank you, the scientific committee, and also all the patients and the patient reps that helped you to organize these 4 days for us. And so I hand over to you.
Thank you, Fabiola. Something should happen now. Yeah. So this is the QR code for Slido. Slido is your opportunity to sit in your seats and quietly ask questions, not of me, later on. Or you have the options to come to the mics and ask questions in the time-honored fashion. But Slido, if you download the app, you can ask questions throughout the symposia. So it's a great pleasure and actually quite a substantial amount of relief to be standing here and welcoming you all to the 21st Conference of the International Retrovirology Association. We're delighted that you've come to London. UK may not have the highest prevalence of HTLV1 infection globally, but it's a very important subject for us here, and we are keen that you're here to help us not only share and advance the science, but also to raise awareness about this important infection, which really goes unnoticed by many, many people. So thank you for coming to London. Now, my next slide should be my conflict of interest. And I'm extremely disappointed that it's so empty. I wanted a list of all the pharma companies that had supported us. I'll come on to support in a minute. We kicked off yesterday with the pre-conference workshops, and I'm extremely grateful to all the coordinators of those. We kind of sprung it upon you quite late in the day. You each took your subject and created a workshop which was individual, tailored to the subject, and I went to every single one, and they were amazing, they were wonderful, they were encouraging, and I thank you all for your participation and for that organization. Now, that was quite busy, but it doesn't get any quieter. We've got 9 symposia coming up, covering a range of themes, and there's quite often interdisciplinary talks within those symposia, so watch out for that. We've got 3 keynote addresses, which are all looking at prevention in one way or another. We've got this morning one on how to go about preventing mother-to-child transmission. We've got a keynote on vaccine for HTLV, and we've got a keynote on how to use currently available therapies as well in prevention. Importantly, we've got 2 really exciting high-quality poster sessions tonight and tomorrow, following on from the symposium, with refreshments to keep you going. And I do encourage you to go and talk to the presenters and really make the most of your time with us here. They are fantastic sessions. I'm also grateful to everybody who's made the effort to help us make your science more accessible to everyone, to each other in the room, including people who come from disciplines, but also our community reps, and so that we can communicate better outside. So thank you for all doing your lay summaries. And just to say that they are being looked at in detail by our community reps as we go around and try to find the best posters in particular. I'm extremely grateful to the local organising committee who've been on this journey for the last 2 years, have met regularly and considered all the facets. I'm particularly grateful to our community reps. We've got Rose there pictured, but we also earlier on had Sue and Sky, and they handed on the baton, if you like, halfway through. Thank you to them. And I am going to single out Damien, because Damien isn't a local person. A bit far to be local, Melbourne. But he could have rested on his laurels after the Melbourne meeting, but he didn't. He joined us in organising and passing on his experiences to us, and we're extremely grateful, Damien. Likewise, to the Scientific Programming Committee. We had representatives on that from all the permanently inhabited continents, and I've got pictures of them here. I thank you for guiding the programme, reviewing the abstract, selecting the speakers, and really just being an important part of the design of this conference. And I'm particularly grateful to those who are in the farthest east of the globe, as we think of it, from London, who lost many hours of sleep, as our conference calls tended to be at about 3 a.m. for you. So thank you to you for that. Now, getting on to the supporters. I've already mentioned where we didn't get support, which actually makes the support we got even more valuable, even more precious. And I'm grateful for the financial support of the UK Health Security Agency, of Imperial College themselves through various guises, including the diagnostic lab we have, the MDU, the Imperial Policy Forum, who supported us yesterday, to the Imperial Health Charity, who have supported patients to come, and people and from low and middle income countries. I'm really grateful and impressed with the support we got from Reciprocal Space. They met with us early on. They spent a lot of time working out what our needs for a website would be. They designed every single detail, the font, the color, everything, and delivered the website. And then at very short notice, have continued to update the website and make everything that you have seen happen, and they've done it completely free of charge. They are here. Please come and talk to them, and if you need a website, I can certainly recommend them. I'm grateful to the Doherty Institute, the Australian government, and I'm going to get this wrong, ACH4, who have provided the funding that enables us to film each of these sessions over the next 3 days and make them accessible to our colleagues and community in Australia, to whom I say hello. And sorry you can't be here, but hope you can share in that way. So thank you for that funding. And of course, we will make that filming available to everybody through the, I'm going to say, IRVA website. And on that note, my thanks also to all the speakers who agreed to be filmed, and so we could share and disseminate that knowledge too. The other people I want to just highlight, the MDPI, who provided some travel scholarships, Blood Cancer UK, the Brazilian Ministry of Health, and Cyberdine, who, and you saw hopefully their exoskeleton in action yesterday. And I think I've covered everybody there, apart from, of course, IRVA, who are there. So I didn't move on. Okay. So now, finally, to you all, without whom this conference would be extremely lonely. So thank you for coming. I was extremely excited that we had 194 in the end abstracts that we accepted, and it was a really hard task, as I've mentioned with the programming committee, to select 91 oral presentations and 3 keynote speakers, all selected from the abstracts. And I'm grateful that we've got so many high-quality presentations. And of course, that meant that there were lots and lots of posters, presentations that might on another day have been oral presentations. And I thank you for continuing to support us and bringing your posters and talking about them one-to-one. We've got 233 registered now, and from whom we've chosen being supported by the workshop coordinators yesterday and the 18 symposia chairs, everybody from the registration that we've received. I want to thank particularly WHO, the World Health Organization, PAHO, the Pan American Health Organization, and the UK Health Security Agency for their presence with us. It's extremely encouraging to know that such august bodies are supporting this, the way we try to tackle this problem with HTLV infection, how we go about preventing infection, how we go about better managing infection. And it was wonderful to have Meg Doherty, the Director General of HIV, hepatitis, bloodborne viruses, and STIs with us participating in the workshops yesterday. And we've got speakers this morning, including our guest of honor, Isabella, and we've got Leandro Serino representing Meg in a few minutes. So your presence here today means a lot to us, and we thank you for your support and encouragement. But I also want to think about those who couldn't attend. It's extremely disappointing that colleagues from Iran were denied visas. And I don't know how we address that. Maybe we can find a host venue which will open its doors to everybody. I don't know how that works. We need a United Nations kind of approach to that. But that was very disappointing. We had 7 people registered from Iran, some who had oral presentations who couldn't attend. Some can't attend because of ill health, and our thoughts are with them. And some couldn't attend because despite the support we could offer, they still couldn't afford the flights to get here. So again, something we need to think about for the future. I am, however, extremely grateful and proud and privileged to welcome once again our community representatives. And we're going to hear from Rose Maguire and Adijane Jesus very shortly. They've been with us on this journey of preparing the conference. They've been guiding us, they've been advising us, and just say we are keen once again to listen to what you have to say. And just before I hand over to you, I'll say words I never thought I would say, which is, please post your photos and things with something called hashtag HTLV 2024. Apparently it does wonderful things and will raise awareness of HTLV, not just here, but globally. That's I'm told. So I'll leave that to you. And I think on that note, it's time for me to hand over to whoever's going first. I think it might be... You want to come first? And Carol is going to come up and translate. So please welcome Adjana Jesus.
Bom dia. Inicialmente, agradeço imensamente a oportunidade de participar da Conferência Internacional de Londres.
First, I would like to thank the opportunity to join the conference in London.
Em nome da Associação HTLV Vida,
In the name of the HTLV Vida Association
e a presidente Márcia Brandão,
and the president, Márcia Brandão,
agradecemos imensamente a oportunidade de estar aqui participando desta conferência.
I thank very much to be able to be here today joining this conference.
Agradecemos também a doutora Fabiola Martins,
We thank Dr. Fabiola Martin,
Dr. Grant Taylor, presidente da conferência,
Dr. Graham Taylor, the president of the conference,
a Organização Mundial de Saúde,
WHO,
a OPAS,
PAHO,
doutora Socorro Cross,
Dr. Socorro Gross,
Miguel Aragão.
Miguel Aragão. This is easier.
Agradecer também ao Ministério da Saúde do Brasil,
And the Brazilian Ministry of Health,
aqui em nome da doutora Angélica Miranda.
here in the name of Professor Angélica Miranda.
Tem também Pamela, que não está aqui, e Maíra, que eu ainda não vi hoje.
And Pamela, who is not here, and Maíra, who is sitting over there.
Preciso agradecer porque venho de uma família inteira de pessoas que vivem com HTLV.
I need to say thank you because all my family is living with HTLV.
Diante da falta de informações, dificuldade de acesso, falta de acompanhamento multidisciplinar,
Due to the lack of awareness, lack of access to healthcare, and lack of medical care,
e ausência de medicamentos,
and lack of drugs,
me juntei às pessoas que vivem com HTLV no Brasil para criar a Associação HTLV Vida.
So I joined forces with other people living with HTLV in Brazil to create this organization called HTLV Vida.
Para pensar, organizar, provocar e criar políticas públicas.
To organize, create and provoke public policies.
São 14 anos de existência.
We have been with this association for 14 years now.
E todos os avanços que temos hoje, contamos com o município e também com o estado da Bahia.
And all the advances that we have was joined forces with the municipal and state level.
Estamos avançando porque estamos juntos.
And we are moving forward because we are working together.
Sonho em um dia ver avanços com vacinas, antirretrovirais, teste rápido.
I dream of one day having vaccine, antiretroviral drugs, and a point-of-care test.
Sonho também em ver futuras gerações livres do HTLV.
And I want to see a future generation free of HTLV infection.
Mas isso só será possível
But this is only possible
se nos unirmos.
if we stay together.
Pesquisadores,
Researchers,
gestores
health managers,
e sociedade civil.
and civil society.
Tenho 2 pedidos.
I have 2 requests.
Não desistam do HTLV.
Don't give up on HTLV.
E o segundo pedido é que a gente faça como o Dr. Bernardo Galvão.
And the second one is so we can work as Professor Bernardo Galvão.
Incentivem novas organizações civis.
That we incentivate new civil society organizations.
As conquistas só vêm quando nós estivermos todos e todas engajados.
We will only advance if we have everyone together engaging to this main objective.
Oportunizando o diálogo.
Making possible the dialogue.
E quando colocamos na agenda de saúde pública pessoas que vivem com HTLV.
And when we include in the public health agenda people living with HTLV.
Essa inclusão é extremamente importante e necessária para o avanço no cuidado das pessoas que vivem com HTLV.
This inclusion is of utmost importance for the advancing of care of people living with HTLV.
E agora sou eu. Thank you.
Thank you.
Obrigado. So now it's a pleasure to welcome Rose Maguire to the podium, representing patients and community from the UK.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I just want to say thank you to Graham for all the work that you've done to put this conference together. And thank you all for being here and for having me. I've got a disclaimer. I'm Jamaican. I can't pronounce a lot of words. So what I say is not necessarily what you're going to hear. But if you have any issues and you want any explanation, can you just make a beeline for Edina and she'll explain it to you. Now, I'm here to share with you the experiences of 4 women from different walks of life intersecting because of HTLV. We have come together through our patient workshops to have our voices heard and ensure that we keep campaigning and working towards change. Melanie. Melanie was misdiagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and this is Melanie over here. There's lots of support in the MS community. However, when she was diagnosed with HTLV, she was met with a barren landscape, with nothing on offer and nowhere to turn. Fatimata, sitting at the back up there. Her mother had HTLV. Sadly, her mother recently died because of it. She, Fatimata, passed it on to her daughter, and they have just discovered that her whole family, or most of her family, including her 12-year-old nephew, has HTLV1. Carol, at the back there, for you it was pure luck. She went to her GP for a twisted ankle, so this is totally unrelated, and was referred for physio, had her reflexes tested, then referred to a neurologist who knew about HTLV, tested her for it, and referred her to St. Mary's. And to me, I sustained a needle stick injury at work, and luckily for me, I worked in one of the 2 hospitals that actually tested for HTLV. It takes about 5 years to diagnose rare diseases, but for HTLV, it's 7+. Are we there yet? No. Maybe because you're not looking in the right places. So this leaves the questions. Where is best to test? Why are people not being diagnosed faster? How many are being misdiagnosed? What can we do to increase the awareness and knowledge of HTLV worldwide? How do we get people to sit up, hear us, and to take action? How can we collaborate across the divide worldwide, outside of our known silos, to include people like us, to work together to affect change? So but look at this slide here, how HTLV affects us. It is different for all of us, and this is just scratching the surface. HTLV is overlooked, it's undercover, it's hidden, it exists in the shadows. Why is that? For me, is it because it mainly affects Black and ethnic minorities in the UK? For Melanie, it is a barren landscape with little support, recognition, or acknowledgement, and it feels like an uphill battle for the simplest of things. For Fatoumata, it destroys families. For Carol, you become someone you don't recognize. For us all, it disconnects us from our sense of humanity. Our care is very fragmented. It isolates us, even within our own families. Simple things or complex. For Carol, walking distances and having to use a walking aid means that she has to think harder about where she goes to and how she gets there. For Melanie, things are not as straightforward, and the planning, organizing, and evaluating is exhausting. For example, just getting up and out of bed, just being able to get out and about without thinking about it, always having to have someone go with her, and that complete loss of independence, that is where the complexity lies. For Fatoumata, knowing that her family dies around her because of this virus is soul-destroying. And for me, I have a fear of rejection. How do I repetitively explain or share my diagnosis only to be rejected times and time again? Therefore, I have reluctantly taken the difficult decision to remain single. That is hard for me because I like being around people. Just have a look at these quotes. They cover fear, hope, how a specialist place is holistic, bringing all the bits of me together in one space, lack of awareness, sudden transformation from healthy to diseased to death. Right, there's a quote on there that you can read that really is very, very pertinent. It was from the former Chief Medical Officer, Dame Sally Davis. Include us before you put anything on paper. You know, involve us before, during, and after. Remember, we want to help. Therefore, it is important that we are included all the way through. And come back to us to let us know the results. We hope that being at this conference and sharing our experiences helps to highlight the value of patient partnership. Patient Partnership Workshop identifies the values of our shared experiences. Although we are different, we are the same, and when we come together, we can drive change. Information plus awareness plus knowledge are key. And finally, this foolish notion that awareness of or knowing that you have the virus or screening pregnant women for the virus may make people and their families feel anxious, depressed, or stigmatized because there is no treatment, in my opinion, is ludicrous. That could only be said by someone who have no lived experience and who doesn't look like me. Stop being expert of our lived experience. Hear us, acknowledge us, and our contributions. Please come and find Carol, Melanie, Fatoumata, and myself. We want to network, share, and contribute. Thank you for listening.
I want to thank both Adejani and Rose for expressing so eloquently some of the issues that not only that they're facing, but also the challenges that we are all here together to address, and putting a real perspective on some of the sort of arguments that we face when we're trying to advance the fight against HTLV infection and trying to bring in preventive measures. So thank you again. I just, fantastic. Thank you. I mentioned in my opening remarks that we were delighted and encouraged by the presence of people representing the WHO. And it's a real privilege now to ask Leandro Serino, who is an advisor on hepatitis viruses, and I'm going to add HTLV to that title, Leandro, prevention and control for the Pan American Health Organization. Leandro is really driving forward the agenda that WHO identified in 2019, and it's appropriate that you're here to talk on behalf of not only PAHO but the WHO. Thank you, Leandro.
Thank you, Graham. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. First, I would like to thank the organization for the invitation, for WHO and the Pan American Health Organization for participating here in a very spotlight position in this conference. Dr. Meg Doherty, the director of the Global HIV, STI, and Viral Hepatitis Programs, she sends her regrets. She was not able to attend the conference, the full conference, but she was here yesterday attending the workshops, and she's really pleased to have attended and to be listening and to networking here and to identify and listen to some of the needs that the HLV community and what the expectations are regarding the WHO role in this fight against HTLV. I don't have a proper presentation, but I have a few slides just to help me kind of illustrate what the points that I want to make, the message that I want to share. And what I want to talk about is how we envision here, at least from WHO perspective, how we can use the already existing strategies and interventions that are being deployed already for several diseases and conditions, and how we can include HTLV as part of this, and how we can drive and create a public health agenda on HTLV through integration. The first opportunity that we have now to promote HTLV is the Global Health Sector Strategies on HIV, STIs, and viral hepatitis. That strategy was published by WHO in 2022. Following the publication of the first strategies that was in 2016. But for the first time, it's one single strategy for this whole range of diseases, kind of ensuring that integration is the key word of the work and the joint collaboration across diseases. And I'm not going to details on these strategies. I think it's been already presented in several opportunities, but I want to highlight that the strategy has a series of actions. There are more than 100 actions and recommendations for policymakers on how to design national policies and national responses for the diseases, and they have share actions and share recommendations that kind of overlap for the three different epidemics, but we have also specific actions according to what the specificity of each of these diseases and epidemics. HTLV is included, is mentioning, is not in a very preeminent position in this, but we are recognizing that HTLV is an infection of importance, and there are 2 actions the recommending countries to address the HTLV, focusing on vertical transmission and focusing also on scaling up access to care and treatment to address the sequelae of the infection. The strategy also is organized around 5 lines of action. So it's integrated service delivery, optimization of health systems and services, data generation and use of data, engagement with community, and innovation. So across these different lines, I think we have several opportunities to include HTLV. WHO just published this report on the accountability report on the implementation of this strategy during the World Health Assembly. And well, the picture is that we are, globally, we are off track on the targets defined by 2025. And we need to scale up if we want to achieve the targets that was defined to be achieved by 2030. Like the deaths are not declining as fast enough as we wanted well, if we want to achieve the targets. And in case of hepatitis B, the mortality is even increasing, no? The mortality for hepatitis B. This is data for 2022 compared to 2020. And also the new infections are not declining as we expected. There are more than 1 million new infections across the different diseases each day. Only STIs, the 4 main STIs that we have information for, we have almost 400 million infections, new infections every year. We don't have data for HTLV. But why I'm mentioning this? Because well, looking at this picture, we expected, at least we hope, that countries will need to go back and review their strategies, reassess the situation, and kind of scale up and strengthen their national responses to these epidemics. And that's an opportunity also to integrate and to promote that the countries, as they do it, they can also address HTLV as part of this improvement, I would say, of the national responses to these diseases. We have also WHO and the regional office, we have also different strategies from different programs, and to, like I said, integration is the word, that's the key word that we are using and trying to promote. And we have several opportunities, like we have a strategy to integrate HIV and STIs into the primary health care. There is another one to integrate non-communicable diseases and HIV, tuberculosis, and sexually reproductive health. And even PAHO has its own program that's a priority for the director at the regional director, is that integrating non-communicable diseases in primary health care. So it's to improve the capacity, strengthen the infrastructure of the primary health care to be able also to work on some non-communicable diseases. And looking at these opportunities, these already ongoing strategies, we can think and identify these opportunities on how to integrate HTLV interventions on that. And also, one specific strategy that I'm kind of responsible for at the regional level, that's the elimination of mother-to-child transmission initiative. WHO has the triple elimination, HIV, HIV syphilis, and now with the inclusion of hepatitis B. In the Americas, we also have congenital Chagas as target for the elimination, and we are working now to include HTLV as part of this initiative. But I just wanted to show here, this is the framework for interventions, and the way that we package this EMTCT plus, as we call it in the region, is to think about package of interventions that we can offer to women, their family, and children across the course of life. So we present this like if you have a woman attending a health services before she is pregnant or during pregnancy, at the moment of the delivery, and the follow-up for the children and for the woman. what specific interventions that we can offer, and then we can train healthcare workers at the ANC, antenatal care or primary health care, so they can think about these interventions as a package and will not forget any of these, like screening for HIV without screening for syphilis or hepatitis, and etc. So this is a clear opportunity where we can integrate specific recommendations for HTLV, particularly in terms of regarding the screening and diagnosis for HTLV, and also a network of referring patients to specialized service when is the case. We have challenges, of course, to integrating and decentralizing these interventions, but the experience shows us that with proper training, capacity building, a strengthening of the infrastructure, and the definition of specific roles of the antenatal care and the primary health care of this multi-professional team at the first level of care, if they have their roles very defined, identified, and they are aware that they are part of this continuum of care of the patient, they are able to do it, and they can can be a game changer on addressing all the different epidemics that we are talking about here, including the HTLV. And in addition, the MTCT now and the elimination of HIV, elimination of STIs, is part of a broader framework, broader strategy for the elimination of communicable diseases. In the region of the Americas, we have the Elimination Initiative, that it's a framework to integrate and to respond in an integrated way, comprehensive and integrated way, to the elimination of more than 30 diseases. And these diseases are the ones that we have already strategies and frameworks and policies with targets for elimination by 2030, some earlier, some after, but we are taking 2030 as an overall target here. And diseases that the elimination is technically and scientifically feasible. So we have here a wide range of diseases, and including diseases that have been already eliminated, but we need to work to maintain the elimination, like some vaccine-preventable diseases. We have some targets for eradication, some elimination as a public health problem. We have even including some environmental risks that can be eliminated. So the idea is to integrate it and to address this in a higher level within the ministries of health, within the health sector at the national level. So this is also an opportunity to integrate HTLV. As I mentioned, we are working here to integrate EMTCT. We have hepatitis B, HIV, Chagas, and we're working to include, and we hope to see HTLV listed here in this list very soon. We have 4 lines of actions, again, very aligned with the global health sector: services, strategic information, determinants of health, and governance and finance. So the idea is that we have diseases with different stages. Some are very close to elimination, others have still a long way ahead. But the idea is to share experiences, to discuss how to overcome specific barriers. Some of the diseases may have some challenges that others have overcome in the past, and also the idea to optimize the use of resources. Specifically about the work that we're doing on HTLV, both from the global and the regional level, it was already mentioning the meeting of that WHO held in 2019 with experts that resulted in the meeting report with specific recommendations on how WHO should address the HTLV, with development of guidance, support research, support integration of services, and then awareness and communication. Out of these 12 recommendations, maybe 2 or 3 only were fully achieved, but we are engaging with this development of guidance. So we hope in the short term we'll be able to show more progress regarding this. But also, directly following this meeting, WHO has prepared a document, a technical report, synthesizing the evidence and some level of response that countries are implementing here. At the regional level, at PAHO, following these meetings and this recognition by WHO that we need to respond to HTLV, and considering the importance, the epidemiological importance of HTLV for the region of the Americas, we start responding as well. We start working on the topic, initially increasing awareness, and that was a partnership with the HTLV channel and the Minister of Health of Brazil, kind of pushing PAHO to start talking about HTLV. So we had a series of webinars and a series of technical reports with countries' experiences. What countries are doing, what are the needs, what are the challenges, so we can sensitize ministers of health about HTLV in the region, awareness. We were able to do some limited resource mobilization to support research and also to support this whole set of activities from the WHO program on neglected tropical diseases. The government of Canada also supporting some activities. And we are currently, we just concluded a questionnaire for in the region to understand a little better what's happening in terms of policies, interventions, and access to HTLV services. We have the publication of these results pending, and what we have in the pipeline, or at least what we are planning to work on. From the global perspective, WHO is committed to the development of the guidelines. As we've mentioned, that is one recommendation from the team of experts. It seems that now it's kind of launching the process to develop these guidelines, and they're going to be focusing on two areas. One specific to EMTCT, taking advantage of the triple elimination, EMTCT plus strategy, and other regarding testing, diagnosis, and the surveillance. So we are able to generate the information, the data that we need to strengthen the response. This is going to be using the WHO grades process that for our guidelines to develop and to issue proper WHO recommendations, and that takes some time. But we are now in the internal process for approvals of these guidelines to start working on this, so we hope to have some news in the near future. But still, since the process is it's a long process, then we wouldn't expect a final guideline maybe early next year. But in the meantime, at the regional level, we are having the pipeline a report. We are calling that a good practice statement. And that's a document, a technical document compiling some of the recommendations, some of the interventions and experiences that countries in Latin America is implementing, or Latin America and the Caribbean is implementing, so we can have a roadmap that countries can look at and start considering using the same interventions at the national level, at the national responses, and the focus is on the MTCT of HTLV1. And for that document, we are also including some interim targets and goals, and that's something that we think it's important, because we are talking about elimination, we are talking about aligning HTLV with the other diseases that are including these different strategies, and we need to align the framework. Now, all of the diseases, they have targets, they have goals, impact targets, programmatic goals, programmatic objectives, and we don't have the information yet, the data to define specific concrete targets for HTLV. We don't know where we are in terms of the burden. We don't know the specific impact of each of the interventions that we have available and how these we're going to change and drive the epidemic. But we can include some targets based on the experiences for countries like Japan, especially. So we are taking this into consideration, and we are calling these interim targets because we hope that very soon we'll be able to confirm, validate, or to update these targets. And my final message is regarding the contributions from civil society. We will not move forward without engaging with the community, without engaging with civil society. And that's for both WHO, for academia, and for national policymakers and responses. And we just heard about the experiences. We just heard about the experiences and the role of the civil society and the community. and the needs, no? And we need to hear the community, we need to hear and to listen to their needs and to adjust and to adapt the response based on those needs as well. And what I want to mention here is that civil society cannot work alone. You also need to work together with other groups, with other civil society organizations. Here, I'm sorry it's in Spanish, because we don't have this document in English, but it's a document prepared by the civil societies in Latin America from different diseases, committing themselves to work together. So we have a different range of diseases, different range of lived experiences, but what is common is the capacity, the experience, the history and the resilience of these community organizations, and they can share these experiences and they can support each other and how to promote visibility to their own specific diseases. And I do believe that the HTLV group can benefit from integrating, from interacting with other diseases, not necessarily from these diseases that we have here, but also primary health care, sexually and reproductive health, community health workers, lay health workers, and etc. We have a whole range of communities, community-based organizations that you can integrate and you can exchange experiences. Thank you.
Thank you, Leandro, for presenting that background and where we are and where we're heading. That's really helpful and encouraging. I'm now going to invite our guest of honor to come and address us. Professor Isabel Oliver, amongst other things, is co-director of the National Institute of Health Research, Health Protection Research Unit on Behavioural Science and Evaluation at the University of Bristol. She's also an honorary professor of the University College of London. But most importantly, she's the Director General of Science and Research and the Chief Scientific Officer at the UK Health Security Agency. And we're extremely grateful that you've given up time out of your very busy schedule to come and address us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Graham and colleagues. It's a real pleasure to welcome you to this 21st International Conference on Human Retrovirology, HTLV, and related viruses. I know that there are colleagues here from all over the world, reflecting the wide geographical distribution of HTLV and the significant burden of ill health that it causes. The importance of this event is evident through the lived testimonies and experiences shared with us by Anjani, Rose, Melanie, Carol, and Fatimata. I'm grateful for you to share those experiences with us, and also to the organizers for starting the event with the experiences of people living with HTLV. What strikes me is that it is almost 50 years since HTLV1 was first discovered. However, there is so much still to learn. For example, we've seen in the slides from Leandro just now that the WHO estimates that there are about 5 to 10 million people living with HTLV1. However, the scarcity of reliable data indicates that this is likely to be a significant underestimate. HTLV1 is recognized as the cause of T-cell leukemia, lymphoma, HTLV1-associated myelopathy, and a range of other serious inflammatory diseases, including bronchiectasis, uveitis, and dermatitis. HTLV1 is also linked to a number of life-threatening opportunistic infections. Despite all this, and despite the enormous scientific advancements that we've seen over the past 50 years, there are significant gaps in knowledge, including in the fields of epidemiology, pathogenesis, diagnostics, therapeutics, vaccines, and prevention. This is why this event is so important, and I would encourage you to make the most of of it and the collaborations that you might be able to develop amongst yourselves to tackle these gaps. The publication of the World Health Organization's technical report on HTLV in 2021 was a major development, including a range of recommendations, guidance on surveillance and approaches to generate accurate seroprevalence data, integration of HTLV into existing clinical and public health programs for preventing STIs and mother-to-child transmission, improved testing strategies, particularly in the most resource-challenged settings where the majority of people with HTLV1 live, and collaborative clinical cohorts to understand disease manifestations and progression rates and support development of effective therapies. Here in the UK Health Security Agency that I work for is responsible for protecting health from infectious diseases and other threats to health. We are a scientific organization and committed to working in partnership with academia and with colleagues nationally and internationally to reduce the burden of infectious diseases. We have operated an HTLV-enhanced public health surveillance program since 2002, and my colleagues are presenting the latest data at this meeting. Reducing the burden from blood-borne viruses is a key priority for us. Although the population living with HTLV1 in the UK is smaller than that for other blood-borne viruses, our latest estimates indicate that the number of people living with the virus has increased over the past 30 years, from approximately 15,000 to 36,000, with diagnosis of T-cell leukemia lymphoma also increasing. And cases, as we've heard already this morning, are not equally distributed in our population, with people in the UK, with people from Black Caribbean heritage being most affected. However, still, most people living with HTLV1 are unaware of their infection. As it is the case in many other countries in the UK, we do screen blood and organ donors, but we know that there is more to do to prevent new infections and to reduce the burden of HTLV1-driven disease. So what is needed? So key areas in which research and knowledge advancement are needed include more robust surveillance data, which is required to inform policy, strategy, service implementation, and resource allocation. As I already mentioned, we know that worldwide estimates are likely to be underestimated, and there are major knowledge gaps for key parts of the world, including North and East Africa, Eastern Europe, and Southeast Asia. We need evidence on cost-effective testing strategies. Improvements are needed, particularly for confirmatory serological testing and proviral load quantification using PCR techniques to enable rollout to key relevant populations. There is a need for international clinical guidelines as to who should be offered a test and in which settings. This particularly relates to sexual health and antenatal services, blood and organ donors, and people who inject drugs. There is great need for effective antiretroviral therapies, which so revolutionize the field of HIV, and as a result of which people with HIV can expect to live a normal or near normal life expectancy. So far, no antiviral agent has proven effective for the treatment of HTLV1. Improved knowledge of HTLV viral targets in vitro and development of effective antiviral agents needs to be progressed to clinical trials as a matter of priority. Improved treatments for adult T-cell leukemia lymphoma are also urgently needed. The prognosis remains poor, even with chemotherapy and allogeneic hematopoietic stem cell transplant. We know that 50% of people diagnosed with HTLV1-associated myelopathy will be wheelchair-dependent within 20 years of first symptoms. Treatments for myelopathy remain suboptimal, with limited efficacy and frequent side effects. Targeted therapies are urgently needed for this condition. So given the limited therapeutic options that we have at present, preventing transmission must remain a priority. Clear evidence-based interventions have been established, particularly screening of blood and organ donations, as I just mentioned, or use of condoms to prevent sexual transmission, and avoidance of breastfeeding, which reduce the risk of vertical transmission significantly. However, we know that many of these interventions are difficult to achieve or sustain, particularly in certain areas. So novel strategies for transmission prevention are very much needed. Recent discoveries on the activity of antiretrovirals to block infection of cells in vitro have raised the possibility of HTLV pre-exposure prophylaxis as a biomedical intervention for prevention. So that's an exciting development, and we look forward to the development of the evidence in this area. We saw through the pandemic the enormous advancements in science to secure rapid development of vaccines. The development of a vaccine to prevent HTLV infection is also greatly needed, as is more data on the social and economic impacts of HTLV. And again, learning on the lessons from the HIV pandemic, continuing efforts to raise awareness of HTLV are very much needed, working with community members, researchers, and clinicians. So enormous gaps in evidence, but this conference therefore presents a wonderful opportunity to address many of these gaps. The program is really exciting, and it includes important new seroprevalence data from Malaysia, Gabon, Uruguay, and the French Antilles. We have presentations advancing our understanding of the molecular biology of HTLV, including pathways involving viral proteins and potential new targets for antiviral compounds. There is a session given to mechanisms of viral persistence, including hijacking of cellular proteins for enhanced infectivity, recruitment of cellular transcription factors to favor viral latency, and characterization of HTLV1 elite controllers. There are new data presented on neuroinflammation, including insights into the role of HTLV1 specific CD4 cells in myelopathy. And there is a session highlighting advancements in the treatment of ATL, including outcomes of ATL cohorts receiving hematopoietic stem cell transplants in Latin America and Japan, data on immunotherapeutics, and trials of bexaroterin and velinostat in AZT and interferon. There are also learnings from the successes in tackling epidemics of other blood-borne viruses, including HIV and hepatitis B. Papers presented include the use of antiretrovirals developed against HIV to block HTLV1 transmission in vitro, with implications for clinical studies of HTLV pre-exposure prophylaxis. Impact on antivirals of HTLV1 proviral load in HIV, HTLV co-infection, and risk of vertical HTLV1 transmission from hepatitis B surface antigen positive mothers. There is also an important session given to HTLV1 elimination as a public health problem, considering examples from Brazil, Peru, and the overall region of the Americas. Prophylactic vaccination inducing neutralizing antibodies resulting in sterile protection from HTLV1 challenging macaques, and use of mouse models for developing functional cure HTLV1 therapeutics. So a really exciting program addressing a lot of those gaps that I mentioned a minute ago. So this conference offers a fantastic opportunity for scientific progress to address the gaps in evidence that so desperately need to be addressed. I'm sure it will be, there'll be a lot of fruitful discussion and debate, I would encourage you to use the opportunity to develop the partnerships that will be critical to make scientific progress in this area. And finally, please enjoy your stay in London, and I hope you make the most of your trip. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Isabel, for your insights, and your encouragement, and the direction that you're also providing. And it's been great. I've worked with UCSA and previous names for that organisation for more than 20 years now, and it's a partnership that really we need to continue to develop and build, and hopefully do the same thing in other areas. So we come to our final talk of this opening plenary, and it's a great pleasure to introduce Professor Angelica Miranda, who has been working tirelessly over the last few years with the community in Brazil, and most importantly from her position within the Ministry of Health of Brazil, to bring the elimination of HTLV1 mother-to-child transmission to become, we're on the verge of that becoming a reality, hopefully, in Brazil. And we're going to learn now, Angelica, about the Brazilian strategy to eliminate HTLV mother-to-child transmission. I look like I've confused you completely. Anyway, welcome. We look forward to your keynote address.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank you, Graham, and all the organizers for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here and talking about HTLV and tell you that we have a lot of challenge, a lot of things to be solved yet. And here they put me as the Minister of Health, where I have been assigned for the last 5 years, but I am from the Federal University of Espírito Santo in Brazil. And then we are going to talk about the strategies to eliminate the mother-to-child transmission in Brazil of HIV, but I need to tell you that it's much more, because I would like to tell you very briefly that all the strategies that we have done in Brazil for now. Unfortunately, I do not have any conflict of interest. Also, I hope to have some in the next one. And then we are going to talk about the HTLV. It was discovered in the 80s, but until today, we have a few strategies to work on it. And I'm talking about Brazil, where we have been a lot of problems to address the HTLV, and mainly because we have a big problem in Brazil, there is the inequalities, and we need to go for the inequalities if we wanted to solve this problem, and others too. And we have a lot of people in the world, but a lot of people in Brazil as well. We have 800,000 people living with HTLV in Brazil, and it's an estimation because we do not have epidemiological data yet. And then, what we need to do to address the HTLV in Brazil? And I just put the general thing that you work with HTLV and you know all this stuff. That's why in Brazil and WHO as well, we include the HTLV in the sexual transmitted infections unit, because it's have sexual transmission, but the main transmission that we are going to talk today is about the MTCT, primarily by breastfeeding. And although we have a lot of implemented strategies in Brazil, we still have a long way to go. And I decided, before talking about MTCT, I decided to have to give you an idea of all the policies. And you can see that it's not a new issue in Brazil. We started to design any policy in 1993, the first time that we started to test for blood donors. And then 1993, and then only 1998, we have the second national strategy. Then it's taking longer and longer and longer to try to implement any policy in Brazil. And that's not why, because it's not an important infection, but because we have a lot of problems and we were disarticulated because we needed some group to work specifically on it. And in 2019, we have a change point. First, because in Brazil was created a specific unit for sexual transmitted infection, separate from HIV and hepatitis, and then the HTLV was included in this unit. But I need to tell you that another thing happened because WHO decided to have a meeting in Japan and invited Brazil. And then we decided to go, but we have nothing to present there. Then it was very uncomfortable for us because they invited, thinking that Brazil could be a model. And we were not a model at all, because the last policy was in 2016 and nothing new. And then, oh my God, I am a gynecologist. How can I go there and talk with specialists about HTLV and say what Brazil is doing? Brazil is doing nothing. And then I called the specialist. I called Dr. Ricardo Srack, asking him for help. And he was very nice. After, he complained a lot about the Ministry of Health. And they told me very bad things, that we were doing nothing. It was true. And we needed to do something new. And then I told him, it's in your hands. You help me to invite all the researchers, the civil society, all people that have been working with HTLV in Brazil, and I will sign. Everything you want to do, I will sign behind, because we need something new. And I went to Japan, and we still did not have anything new, but we were trying to do. And the first step we already had, because we had a group, a very good group. And it was government, it was universities, it was civil society, it was a big group, and they were very motivated to do something new. And it was very important, and I think it was the change point for the new policies in Brazil. And then, during the pandemic years, they were very productive, because everyone was thinking about COVID, but we had a group that decided to work on HTLV. And it was very nice, because we were there. We could not travel anywhere. We needed to be virtual, and we decided to do several things. We started to write a chapter, new guidelines, the next version of the new guidelines, and we started to have webinars, and a lot of health professionals asked us, you are going to talk about HTL what? What is HTLV? And it was very important for us, because we recognized that a lot of health professionals, they were not sensitive to the cause. They were not thinking about HTLV. And then we started to do, but I need to tell you that it's one step forward, two steps behind. In 2021, we got to include the HTLV test in the routine for antenatal care. For 2 years later, they get out the HTLV, because it was a lot of money. We cannot spend money with HTLV because we have other infections, other diseases during pregnancy that we need to test. And then we restart, and I need to tell you that Adjane and HTLV Vida, and Carolina and Tatiana in the HTLV channel were very important in this process, because we needed to, in Brazil, we have a universal public health system, but everything that is recommended the Ministry of Health need to pay. Then we have a big commission, and we need to present there all the justification why we think that is important to include this new test, this new technology in the public system. And then we went there once again to do all the explanation why we should screening all pregnant women for HTLV. And Caroline and Adjane were fundamental in this process because they were there, and all the specialists and all the managers and all the economic people were there. But Adjane talked, and they got sensitive because not everything is about costs. We need to consider other things when we are talking about health. And we got now, this year, it was approved again, and now it's approved forever, we hope, because it was testified in the Ministry of Health without the National Commission that we need to include the HTLV test in the pregnant women antenatal care. And then this paper we published during the pandemic, and it was a very important one because we started to have a big picture about the situation in Brazil. We have a very good strength that it's the public health system, universal, in Brazil. Then we can count on it. We have a lot of problems, but it works. But we need to see that the weakness, we do not have epidemiological data, and when we do not have epidemiological data, it's very hard to convince the managers that we need to include a new technology for it, because everything is about cost effectiveness. And the opportunity were all the group together, because we have the government, federal, state, and the municipal, we have the academic, a lot of specialists, we have the civil society working together. And it was a new opportunity because they were wanting to talk and defend everything regarding HTLV. And the threats, the geographic situation in Brazil, because we have a very big country with a lot of inequalities, and it's a problem because we need to have our technologies go to everywhere in the country, and sometimes it's not an easy thing to do. And regarding the pregnancy, then I told you that we do not have a lot of epidemiological data, and we took advantage of this paper from Rosada and Taylor, and showed that the prevalence among pregnant women in Brazil, it's from 0.5 to 1%. Then it was a point to start. And then when we see that Brazil is 0.4 to 1, but when we look for specific papers, specific studies around the country, we can see that a lot of states, they do not have data yet. Then it's not equally around the country. And we know that there are a lot of resources in Brazil that they are against include the HTLV in the antenatal screening, because they think that we have other infections that are common and we should privilege them. But then we have this situation, and then the Ministry of Health asked for a meta-analysis, and we see that the prevalence in the country was 0.6 of HTLV1, but when we go for the regions, it's unequal as well. And then now we are founding a cross-sectional study, a surveillance study, for determining the prevalence in pregnant women in Brazil. We only have for now the preliminary results, and it's 0.13. Then it's another fight that we will have if you have a low prevalence as well. Because we were telling people, we have everything for HIV in Brazil, and the general population is 0.4. And why not HTLV that was 0.6? But now, if we have 0.13, it will be another thing to go through. And why is important? And we are telling the managers that is very important Because we have a high risk of infection with long-term breastfeeding. Then we have a strategy to prevent the infection. And I can tell you it's 0.13, 0.6, 0. Whatever. But for a person that have the HTLV, it's 100%. And if you think about prevention, we need to go for everyone. And then I like this flow chart for management of HTLV infection in pregnant women and the prevention of MTCT that it was proposed by Rosadas in the paper, because we have a big idea that we can work in pregnancy. Do the antenatal care, we can go to the delivery and also the neonatal period. Then it's very important for us during pregnancy that we can go for all the time that she's pregnant. And what's the difference that we can see in the last years in Brazil? We got to bring the infection to the national agenda. And I think this is the most important thing, because we need to get people to think about HTLV. And then it's in the media, and people started to thinking about it's a new infection. It's not a new infection, it's a causing of HIV. Then it was the easiest way to say that it's as old as HIV, but it's neglected. And we need to work together to get this visibility. And then we have this group of specialists that I told you that was fundamental for all the push that we have in the last years. The HTLV channel was very important. I would like to thank the girls, because it was a general information that we give the information to the specialized people, but we also give information to the general population. We need to inform them. We need to have a pregnant women that they know that they have access to the test to know the infection. And HTLV was very good for us too. The point is, we are working together. I think the main point is a teamwork. And then we got the testing during pregnancy and the surveillance data. And now it's a compulsory notification in Brazil, the HTLV during pregnancy. It's a new challenge, and I was talking about that yesterday, because now we need to have diagnostic tests, because now it's a surveillance, but I need to identify the infection for doing the surveillance. And how we got the national mobilization? A lot of publications. The group was very active, and we had a lot of publications, and all the publications, they were translated to Portuguese, some of them also to Spanish, in a summary or in the whole paper, to get access to the Brazilian physicians, the Brazilian nurses, the Brazilian health professionals in general. Because if they are only in English, a lot of people cannot have access to it. And the civil society and the HTLV channel, the HTLV Vida, helped a lot because they participate in webinars. And in the webinars, we could disseminate all the information. And also, the Brazilian Society for Obstetrics and Gynecology. It was very good for us in the public health system that we have the Federal Association disseminating it. And they publish guidelines for all the OB-GYNs in Brazil. And why it was important? Because they started to ask during the antenatal care in the private health system. And then a lot of physicians that work for the private, they also work for the public. And they started to ask who did not have in the public system. And they start to pushing it. And then the pregnant women, because they have a network. And then if I'm testing the private system, why I'm not? If in Brazil, we say that health is a right for everyone in the country, then we need to provide it. And then all the clinical protocols for sexual transmitted infections, we had a specific chapter for HTLV. Then everyone that were interested in syphilis and gonorrhea and chlamydia and HPV, they also had access to the HTLV. And it was very interesting because we had a big webinar during the pandemic, and every week we talk about one of infection. And when we got the HTLV, we had a lot of people, more than 3,000 people in Brazil were connected to watch the webinar. And then it was taped, and people keep watching it later in YouTube. And we have the flow chart for STIs. We have one chapter for HTLV. And we published the Brazilian guidelines in Spanish, in English, as in Portuguese, because we have a long border with all the other countries in Latin America. They speak Spanish. And in the border, I am in Brazil, I'm in Argentina, I'm a Peruvian. We are all together. And then we have also information for general population. And every campaign that we have for STI, we also talked about HTLV. And I can tell you that it was very important because we have a page in the Ministry of Health. We called from A to Z with all the diseases. And we got a lot of access of people looking for information on HTLV because they saw it in the campaigns and they would like to know what is this virus or is a bacteria or whatever is it. And they got interest to know about HTLV. Then it was a very good thing, and once again we work as a team. And then the last year and this year, we have new policies for the prevention of vertical transmission in HTLV in Brazil. And as I told you, now it's definitive because the Secretary of Science and Technology, they approved the inclusion of the HTLV screening and confirmatory test in pregnancy in Brazil. Now it's a decree in the whole country, because before it we had already some states, mainly the state of Bahia, that already have a state law to recommend the screening. But now we have for everyone there. Also, we have the carbapenem, the daily form, because if you are screening them, if you are diagnosing them, we need to offer something for them to prevent the infection. Then we offer the carbapenem and the daily form for HIV and HTLV in the public health system. And now it's the pregnancy card, it's included the information about HTLV as well. And more recently, we decided to screening and to notify. And then we have this problem, because we are going to notify, we need diagnose. And we are counting, and the Brazilian investigators mainly, to develop a rapid test, because it's very important for us to have a point-of-care test for pregnancy. It will be easier in the logistics, because we have a lot of inequalities, and then to get in the vulnerable areas will be important, because we already have point-of-care tests for HIV, for syphilis, for hepatitis B and C. And we have 2 universities in Brazil that have been working with point-of-care. We hope they work, but it's already in the process, because for now, we need to screen them using ELISA. Then it's more difficult because we need all the lab structure for it. And then all this process, I'm glad Leandro told about the elimination of diseases program, because we have the same in Brazil, and we have been working with the elimination disease. And once again, it's a teamwork. We have managers, we have civil society, we have the institutes and universities, everyone involved in this process of the disease elimination in the country. And then we have the Interministerial Committee for the Elimination of Socially Determined Disease. And why we decided to go there? You know that in Brazil we have a lot of inequalities, and this is a problem because I cannot eliminate a disease only in the Ministry of Health or in the Secretary of Health in the states and the municipalities. I need to work with the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of the National Integration. We need to work with the Science and Technology, and a lot of ministries are involved now because it's not only give help, but I need to give socio-economic conditions for these people, and I need to improve the education in the country. Then we have a national movement to work together to get better conditions of life, and then we can try to eliminate some infections. And the goal is to work in an intersectoral way for giving better quality of life for these people. Because we know for our data that a lot of these infections, they are more frequently among vulnerable social exclusion people. Then we need to work with these people if we intend to eliminate these infections in our country. Because they need jobs, they need food, they need housing, they need basic sanitation. We have a lot of problems with sanitation in Brazil. And these people are vulnerable and they are more exposed to these infections in general, not only HTLV. And then we focus on some disease, and we have been working. We are expecting, we are very optimistic, and we expect to eliminate as a public health problem by 2030, Chagas disease, schistosomiasis, lymphatic filariasis. That we already asked PAHO for the certification. We think that we are done. Helminthitis, malaria, onchocerciasis, and trachoma. And HTLV was included in the block of MTCT, because it's very important for us, the elimination of all MTCT. It's a shame on us that we still have MTCT in Brazil, because we have diagnosis, we have treatment, we have a very strong public health system, and why we did not get it yet? Where is our fail? Then we are expecting to eliminate Chagas disease, hepatitis B, HIV, HTLV. It's not included yet, but we are including it in the next protocol. For now, we have the first. You can see that syphilis is the last one, because the syphilis is the major challenge for us. Unfortunately, and we are very sad to say that, but syphilis is a very big problem in Brazil. And we are trying to get, but we think the HTLV will be easier for us to achieve it than syphilis. Then we are going to work, and we are in a pilot now in Brazil and see how to include the HTLV. For it, it was important to include the screening, confirmatory test, and the notification data, because we needed to have this data before start the process. And we are also waiting for PAHO and WHO to give us some indicator how we will be planning the elimination on it. And we also have tuberculosis, leprosy, and HIV that we are planning to reach the operational target, because we know that it's more complicated to eliminate these infections. And now, how is the challenge that we need to address? And HTLV is not different in Brazil, and we need the inclusion of new technologies. We need new technology. We need new tests. We need to have new tests to have a good diagnosis for HTLV and for other infections as well. And we need to go against stigma and discrimination, because all these infections, they are social determinants, but they have a lot of stigma and discrimination. And we need to go for it, not only in the general population, but also among people in prisons, among the indigenous, among immigrants, and we need to go for vulnerable population if we can get success in this process. And we need to reduce all the inequalities. You can see there are a lot of challenge because how to reduce the inequalities, but we need to start. And we are going to go for this way and try to decrease all the inequalities in Brazil. And I'm going to finish now with this phrase that I saw it in a museum in São Paulo, and I was very concerned about the congenital syphilis in that moment, and I visited the Art Visual Museum in São Paulo, and it was very good to see the phrase from Barack Obama saying that change will not come if we wait for some other person or if you wait for some other time. And that's why we have already started and we are working on the HTLV to eliminate it as a MTCT infection, and why not give a better quality of life for our people living with HTLV. I'd like to thank you, and I stop here.
Thank you, Angelica. Wow, you may have not had anything to say in Tokyo in 2019, but you've certainly shown us what can be achieved in 5 years when you work with community, with civil society, with all the academia and the policymakers. And what are we going to hear about in 5 years' time from the rest of the world? That's what I want to know. But you've shown us what's possible. Thank you so much. Okay, that concludes this session. It's been amazing. So good to hear from our patients' perspectives, that they really challenge us. All the addresses we've had from our keynotes, our guests, our guest of honor, thank you. I have just an announcement. Please visit the posters that are on display alongside the Osler Long Room. Tonight, we will be seeing all the odd-numbered posters presented alongside a drinks reception, which I already mentioned. And then we're told you have a free evening to explore London. And the next session, which will follow this coffee break, is the global picture. Please come back for 11 o'clock so we can start on time. Thank you very much.